Spiritual Christianity, collected from the theological works of Emanuel Swedenborg. Chapter 9. Paragraph 138. It has been said more than once in the works of this incomparable writer that the spiritual world, embracing by that term not only the pure and elevated thoughts and affections of the angelic mind, but also the representative objects which flow forth from them into the sentient faculties, is real, and that comparatively the natural world is not real. This is said of the natural world, notwithstanding its materiality, its fixed space, and the regular march of its seasons, its days and hours. How strange must this appear to him who has been accustomed to worship nature as a thing almost divine, who sees in the very permanencies of natural bodies and their indisposition to change one striking proof of their reality, and who would be little inclined to admit that bodies could be real, which had no distinct existence in an external space, but were the effects of the divine life acting upon a finite or imperfect form of mind. To instruct him that the laws of order and correspondency in the spiritual world require that, as the states of the will and of the intellect change, the objects of the senses, seemingly in an external space but really in the sentient faculties, should change along with them in the exactest representative harmony, would be, in his opinion, to present the spiritual world as something very like the baseless fabric of a dream, and not as more real than the natural world, which has, as it appears, so totally different a constitution. Now, passing by for the present the consideration as to whether the permanencies of bodies and their inaptitude to change be any proof of their externality, this at least is evident, that the terms real and non-real must be used in a very different sense from that which is usually given to them in relation to this world. They are indeed used in an entirely different sense, because they are applied to illustrate a system of philosophy of a spiritual and not of a sensual kind, in which the common opinions of men and even of philosophers upon these, and every subject connected with nature and its independent existence, are shown to be errors, and in no other way to be corrected than by the light of spiritual truth. The first thing, therefore, will be to give the sense in which these two terms, real and non-real, are used by the author. We shall then be better able to see the reason of his applying them to the spiritual and natural worlds. Compared with the spiritual world, the natural world is not real, because it actually is not such as it appears to man to be. From Arcana Celestia 4623. The distinction between the real and the non-real is this: the real actually is such as it appears to be, but the non-real actually is not such as it appears to be. From Arcana Celestia 3485. The representations which exist in the other life are appearances, but they are living because they are from the light of life. This light of life is the divine wisdom which is from the Lord alone. Hence it is that all things which exist from that light, unlike such as are from the light of the world, are real. For this reason, it has been sometimes said in the other life that the objects which are seen there are real, whereas the objects seen by men are comparatively not so. For the former are alive and so immediately affect their life, but the latter, not being alive, do not immediately affect the life of man, except with those in whom the objects of this world's light adequately and correspondentially conjoin themselves with those states of mind which belong to the light of heaven, and that to the extent and according to the quality of such conjunction. From Arcana Celestia 4882. In the spiritual world, or in heaven, not anything of space and time enters their thoughts, but whatever is comprehended in this state of life instead. Space indeed appears to spirits and angels, for they too, as well as ourselves, walk about and move about from place to place, and that just in like manner as it appears to man. And yet these are but changes in the state of their life which produce that appearance. In like manner, it appears to spirits equally as it appears to man, as if they lived from themselves, or as if their life were independent of their Creator, and yet it is not their own, but it is from the Lord's divine essence, who is the source of all life. These are appearances. The angels call them real appearances, because to them they appear such as they really are. I have at times conversed about these appearances with certain spirits whose minds were not receptive of goodness, nor as a consequence of truth, and who were not willing to hear that this living from themselves was an appearance, for they were desirous rather that their life should be their own and not derived. But besides the testimony of living experience, they did not live from themselves, and that their journeyings from place to place were mutations and progressions in the state of their life. They were also told that it may suffice them to be unconscious, but that they do not live from themselves, since, being unconscious of it, they could have no more, even if the life in them has been self-derived. But still that it was better for them to understand what really was the fact, for they would then know the truth, and by the possession of the truth be in the light of heaven, for that light is the truth itself, which goes forth from the Lord's divine essence. And moving now back to Tulk's commentary, paragraph 139. It may safely be asserted that out of 100 persons taken indiscriminately from among the educated and the thinking, 99 would pronounce that to be real, or to be worthy to be called real, which comes distinctly before the senses, and especially the sense of touch, and its reality to be the more unquestionable, as it were distinctly obvious to several senses. To such persons, love and its various affections would not be so real as the objects of sight and touch, nor would the sensuous objects of the spiritual world, assuming them to have no existence out of the mind of the sentient being, be considered as real as the objects of the natural world, all of which are believed to exist, at least as to their cause, apart from the mind, in the fixed space of nature. Their reality is even supposed by some to depend upon their having a basis of indestructible matter, which is entirely independent of the mind, and of those secondary qualities by which the various aggregations of matter are supposed to become apparent. In agreement with this mode of judging and believing, few would think of the spiritual world as real. Fewer still would consider mind as more real than the spiritual representative images that come forth and are exhibited in the plane of the senses, or that the least real was that very matter of which the naturalist does not in the least doubt would continue to exist should he and all other created beings were to perish. Paragraph 140. But reality, in the definition of our author, to which everyone will yield assent who can appreciate the truths that belong to the heavenly life, is the coincidence between the order of creation and the right perceptions of that order, which is entertained by the thinking being. In proportion to their agreement is the mind in possession of truth. Its thoughts are to this extent truthful and real, and the more so, as by the light of heavenly wisdom the insight into the coincidence is fuller and more comprehensive. Where, as in our natural ways of thinking, there is no such harmony or coincidence, the conclusions which the intellect draws from the appearance of things are fallacies, and in case it be accustomed to weave from its own spiritual organism a web of ratiocinations to support and to confirm them, every fallacy so confirmed becomes a falsehood. Paragraph 141. The question then is, With what eyes do we behold this universal frame of nature? What kind of mental light do we bring into exercise when we endeavour to explicate the laws and objects of our own sensuous world? Are they alive, or are they dead to us? Are they real, by being connected in our perceptions with those thoughts which pertain to the light of heaven, or do they only wear the semblance of reality and life, but are not actually such as, in the darkness of our minds, they seem to be? If we can connect with them the light of life within us, then we may be assured that to the extent of such connection they have become real and alive. But if they are disconnected, or if our mode of judging does not coincide with those laws of influx, which are the laws of the Creator, they are not, in the sense of our author, either alive or real. But still more entangled in the web of error will our thoughts become if we attempt to connect the matter of our natural world with the all-creating and informing life by bringing our God directly down into the space and time of nature, for by doing so he will cease to be the light of life, or that divine wisdom of the omnipresent love, who has nothing in common with the two imperfect modes of being, extension and progression. After this there is but one step, and he is confounded in our thought with nature in her all-pervading elements. These are questions which it behoves every man searchingly and honestly to ask himself. Let him not think to shelter himself under a cloak of metaphysical verbiage, neither let him suppose that what he is called upon to answer concerns only the externaity or the non-externaity of matter. No, that is but a single member of the living form of truth which gives its peculiar character to the whole. The mind, though composed of many faculties, is a spiritual organized whole, in which, as in all naturally organized structures, the lifeblood of a single part cannot be corrupted without affecting the healthful action of the entire system. Every pursuit may be ennobled or debased, may, in our manner of viewing it, be either false or true, not real or real. The ruling tendency toward spiritualism or materialism will give its own character to every branch of knowledge. If materialism be the ruling fallacy or falsehood, every pursuit will be tinctured and possibly be corrupted by materialism. It will be seen in the false theology which multiplies its gods and sensualizes their attributes. Still more strikingly will it be seen in the pantheism which defies the forms of nature by placing God within them as their most inmost principle, and so turning the Christian God from a divine human being into a mere thing. It is found pervading the false philosophies of the mind, the false principles of science, the false taste, the false estimates of what is commendable and honourable, which have overrun the world. But if spiritualism be the ruling tendency, it will shed its own pure light over every form of knowledge, until it is brought within its heavenly, its protecting influence. It is true, this cannot be done at once. In most instances, the spiritual truth will be seen long before it is universally applied. It is one thing to be convinced, but yet another thing to be able to think uniformly and consistently in agreement with our own convictions. I may be convinced that all things are created by an influx of spiritual life within my mind, and yet I may continue, and shall most probably continue for the whole of my natural life, to think, when my thoughts flow spontaneously, as if the influx of sensuous forms were from without, and as if the mind were formed and built up by such a physical influx. It may be questioned whether in this life we shall ever be able to set wholly free from such fallacious impressions. It belongs to another life and its spiritual thought and affection to think at all times in harmony with the truth, and therefore, and in that respect especially, are the thoughts of angels unlike the thoughts of men. We can think of the truth, and our thoughts shall even bear the clear stamp of convictions, but we can but rarely, and never for a long continuance, think in the truth. A little time, and it seems to vanish imperceptibly from our thoughts. Again, we find ourselves thinking in the space and time of nature, that is, thinking and speaking as if they were extraneous to ourselves, and giving ourselves up freely to the fallacies whose fears are ever secretly acting upon our natural minds. The thoughts of angels are raised above these appearances. They could not, if they would, think in the fallacies which distract the natural mind, and with the myriads of truths by which they are daily recreated and regenerated, and which they owe to their being set free from the entanglements of sensual life, they would not if they could. They are no longer blind, neither are they bewildered by the incongruencies of spiritual and natural thought, but touched by the same divine hand that representatively restored the blind to sight. Quote, "They see all things clearly." End quote.